Hey everyone, it's Mr. Wildboy94. I hope you're doing well today. I have a book review here for a book that I've technically read or listened to as an audiobook, aka Bedtime Story, Once Upon a Time, and I'll get to that in a moment, but it's a book that I saw on Barnes & Noble's shelf probably 8 months ago, 9 months ago, something like that, and when I saw the title, this is around the time they started getting the horror section built up in Barnes & Noble. They had like Jonathan Mayberry and Stephen King, and I saw this book with a very unique spine. It was like beige, and it has a little bit of black on there, and I was thinking, that's unique. It's not some gothic, architectural, gothic-looking book. It's not an emo book either. It doesn't look like a teenager book. And I pulled it out after I saw the title, and I was thinking, there's no way. And it was real. Anyway, it's a book called Penpal by Dathan Auerbach, I think is how you say his name. It's very like German or Dutch or something, which I have both of those in me, so I can mess it up if I want to. Anyway, Penpal is 240 pages long. Not a very super long book. It's actually paced perfectly for what this book needed to be. Let me give you a little bit of a history of this book and my history with it. So Dathan Auerbach is part of something that I actually love quite a bit. Or at least I used to. I kind of still do, depending on what we're talking of. I just usually go to this page and look for the best of stories. There is a Reddit website, obviously, and a subreddit in there called No Sleep, which is about the creepypasta origin. For most creepypastas that you've heard of, like Slender Man and like Jeff the Killer, which is garbage, anything like that, you've probably heard of it from there. Penpal came from there. Dathan Auerbach used to or Auerbach, it has to be Bach. It has to be Bach, because it looks like Stephen King's Bachman, right? B-A-C-H, it has to be Bach. Auerbach, I gotta say it right. Anyway, he was publishing like chapter and chapter and short story after short story on the No Sleep subreddit, and eventually it blossomed into an actual book that he fluffed out, made it what it needed to be, really developed it into a 240-page book. And then he published it. Now, I didn't know about Dathan specifically. I wasn't into No Sleep until I found a channel on YouTube that's very popular even to this day called Mr. Creepypasta. And from then on, I mean, Creepypasta just developed more and more because of guys like this. And then you had like the show Channel Zero that would take certain stories like Candle Cove and make them into amazing television. If you haven't seen Channel Zero, you are missing out. No Sleep, when it develops into real-life media like Channel Zero or like Penpal, it's incredible. But I remember my first job ever was at Walmart, and I fucking hated it. It was awful. But I would come home, I was working third shift, I would come home at like 7 in the morning, and I remember on my one day, or no, I had 2 days off a week. I had 2 days off a week, but it was split up. You had like a Wednesday and a Friday. But not even that. I think it might have been like a Tuesday and a Thursday. But anyway, I would come home on those days where I knew the next day I had off. And when you work third shift, usually unless you're able to somehow supernaturally not do it, you just sleep all day on your days off because it's impossible to stay awake. I don't know what it was with that, but it just was. Never worked third shift since because I can't do it. But anyway, when I was doing that job, as miserable as I was, as much as I hated the job, being your first job, you're not really used to how people are going to treat you like dirt, and it was like that out there, whether it be in management, whatever. And a lot of my frustrations would come out when I would go home and try to write, if I tried, and I would listen to stories. And of course I found Mr. Creepypasta, I found the Skeleton Crew podcast, which I also love to this day. When they do shows, they don't really do much, but I still re-listen to the old stuff over and over again. And I do the same thing with Mr. Creepypasta videos. One of the ones that I listened to years ago, after all that information I just dumped on you, was Penpal. I guess audiobook, narrated, whatever you want to call it, by Mr. Creepypasta. And I remember just being at the house, taking a shower, listening to this stuff, and being shocked by how engaging these stories were from Dathan. Dude, there's not really much out there in the horror community that's written like this. Now, I don't think Dathan's done many books. I think he's done like maybe 2 more outside of this book, post this book, as a matter of fact, and I think this came out a few years back. But Penpal is incredible, and I'll get more into the plot in a moment after all my rambling, but I just really loved that experience. There was a particular scene that's in this book as well, involving a crawl space, that truly scared me. It's not just a book about somebody's horrifying experiences. It's kind of like a fake nostalgia trip. It's kind of like a fake childhood we're exploring here, with some very eerie things that even stand out now. There were moments when I read this book that even I remember certain things that were going to happen after 10 years later that just, you know, set my spine in order. You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of spooked me a little bit. Gave me some chills every once in a while. Penpal basically follows a nameless protagonist, a nameless narrator, who's looking back at his childhood and his childhood best friend, Josh, and like the way they hung out, what they did, where they met when they were very young. We're talking like first graders, second graders, that kind of thing, maybe all the way up to fifth grade. And we follow a lot of the weird experiences he had that in the past didn't make any sense when he was a kid, but he can tell as he got older, talking to his mom, talking about some of the things that happened, kind of really thinking in hindsight as he writes it to us, that these things were more bizarre. Maybe he had some stalker stuff going on, maybe there's some other things, supernatural things that may or may not have been supernatural. He doesn't really know in hindsight. Some of it very well could have been, but it might not also be. It's fantastic in how elegant it's written. This feels sometimes like somebody's first book, but this also feels like somebody who has remastered and refined these stories over and over and over again, ever since the No Sleep days, to really make something special out of it. And it was special back then too. But these stories, the way they're written, dude, they're just naturally waiting for a narrator like Mr. Creepypasta or somebody else, the little voice in your head, whatever, to read this book. I'm telling you, Penpal is such a unique experience, and I don't really know how to explain it otherwise. To me, it really shows how special No Sleep is, and how special a lot, not all, of creepypasta can be. Creepypasta has the potential to be such a very powerful thing. It's sad to see it have come and gone over the years since I've been in high school and since I got out of high school, now being an adult 10 years down the road after graduation. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre not thinking about creepypasta and hearing about it as regularly as I used to. But it can still be good. There are still good stories being put out to this day on that subreddit. If you happen to check it out, you should. It's got some good stuff there. This is one of those absolute classics that came from that community, that subreddit, that website, anything, that have just stuck with the test of time. I mean, they have completely won out. And I think Penpal is an absolute modern-day classic, and it's amazing how I can look online, listen to the different YouTube reviewers, and hear so many people say the same exact thing about how powerful this was. It's not just that it's scary. You don't even know the name of your character, your main protagonist that we're following here, the guy who's writing these stories to us. And each of the book's chapters, if you will, are basically just short stories kind of loosely tied together. And that's really unique because that's what I feel like most people would write their childhood as. Little things would connect from here to there in different parts of their life. That's what this feels like, and it is phenomenal in that regard. But it's not just scary. Like I said, it has some very sweet moments, one involving a neighbor who has dementia. It has one particular moment that actually made me smile quite a bit. It has some really good humor between Josh and our main character, Josh being the best friend from when he was a kid. I just find all of that so relatable in the same way that when I look at like The Body from Stephen King from Four Seasons, or Different Seasons, whatever that book was called. The Body, which eventually became the movie Stand By Me. That relationship you have with that movie when you see it, when you're a little bit older, it really makes you think about your best friends you had when you were a kid and how much you love them and miss them if you still don't talk to them. This book had that same flair to it, and I love that about it. Penpal is just something that a first-time writer should not be able to put together. It's incredible. Dathan Auerbach just really nails it in every single way, and if I ever had to recommend a book to you that I think is a nice, short, compact, concise read that I really think proves the point of what I've said for years, and I've said it in pretty much every review that I make on this channel, the big novels from people like Stephen King and these other people that you see that don't need to make books that big because they don't have enough story to tell or enough character stuff that's worth telling in those. These books that are coming out 400, 500 pages long that just don't need to be nowadays, this book is the answer to that. There is no fat on this book. There is no really anything that needed to be cut from it. I think it's perfect as it is. I think it really is perfect as it is. And frankly, in hindsight, there's not really anything I would change about it. The scares are great, the emotion is great, the writing and storytelling, the narration of it, the voice of that protagonist, we don't even know his name, is just so good. You see this being picked up by teachers to teach to their kids in school, and it deserves that. Penpal is such a masterful read. It's so engaging and fun. The voice of that protagonist is so strong, and I really like that as well. Even from this character coming from a single mother household like I did, I think all of that was fascinating how it went into account, what the mom's actions were in the midst of all of this weird shit happening to her kid. there are things in here that you will never forget, that will put a chill down your spine, whether you've heard of the story, whether you've heard about it, whether you've heard it read to you from Mr. Creepypasta or anybody else. It will stick with you. I promise you, it is such an effective read, and if you haven't read it, you are missing out. But anyway, with that being said, this is one of the best things to ever come from No Sleep, Reddit itself, the internet itself, any of that stuff. Penpal by Dathan Auerbach is incredible. I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, dude, but still, Penpal is an incredible read. I love the cover to it. I'm so glad I was finally able to find a copy of this. I never knew it was in print. And I'm so glad I grabbed it because it is fantastic. It is so worth the time you spend on it, I promise you. If you haven't read Penpal, you owe it to yourself, especially if you're a horror fan, or kind of like just a slice of life fan, I guess, too. If you like that kind of thing, I can't stand that kind of thing, but if you like that kind of thing, this is kind of that too. Penpal is absolutely wonderful, dude. 240 pages is what this guy was able to put this together with. When I go to Barnes & Noble, every single book, again, is like 500 pages, and they never leave an impact the way something like this does. This is written from the heart. This is written from a person who had so much passion into this book, and you can feel it. Even though it's technically a short story collection, but it's loose, so it's still kind of a novel. It's fantastic. Anyway, Penpal by Dathan Auerbach. Have you read it? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. If I had to rate Penpal on a 5-star basis, I always go back and forth on what would I give this book. Do I think it deserves the kind of rating that I want to give it? Yeah, I think it kind of does. I want to think that I have some kind of complaint in my brain about it. Anything bad about it. And really, in hindsight, I don't. I think it's really, really pretty much perfect for what this book wanted to be, what it could be. To me, it's just perfect as it is. If I had to rate Penpal on a 5-star basis, I would easily give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I keep bouncing around whether it deserves a 4 instead of a 5, but dude, this is everything I want in books. 5 out of 5 stars for me. It is incredible. I would totally reread this next summer if I had to. I'd reread it in a couple of weeks if I had to because of how good it is. It's just incredibly engaging, incredibly just, again, powerful. And I'm surprised by that. I'm surprised by how well this held up from my teenhood into my adulthood, or my young adulthood into my older adulthood, whatever the 10 years passing would be. Anyway, this is a great story who got me through a great time, or a bad time, at my life once upon a time. And then reading it now, it just really brought back this memory that I don't even have of this character that I love, that was so good and so fun. But anyway, have you read Penpal? Again, put your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you all have to say about it. Thank you all for watching, guys. I'm finally going to slow down on some reviews. I think I'll have one more book review for tomorrow to catch up on. But aside from that, I really don't have much more. I'm going to read some more, play some more video games, that kind of thing. So it'll be a couple of days, maybe a week or so until I can get another review for you. But I figured I'd catch up on all these Dragon Ball Super reviews and then Penpal and Darcy Coates' book and all of that. Anyway, I got one more tomorrow, and we'll see what you think of that. Anyway, thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Let me know your thoughts on Penpal again. Goodbye.